Mission Holy Land, renewing faith. Israel, millions of Jews, Christians, Muslims have come here over the centuries to honor their God. Mission Holy Land has brought some more distinguished South Florida Christian and Jewish leaders here to learn how their religions, and Islam too, come from the same roots. Archbishop John Favalora.
For me as a Catholic, to be here in the Jubilee year is a great event to reflect upon the faith dimension for the other two great faiths that have their roots here in Jerusalem.
A Protestant, Reverend Priscilla Feliski Whitehead.
An interfaith mission such as this helps us to get beyond the boxes of our own faith traditions.
A Jew, Rabbi Solomon Schiff.
This is the source from which it all started, and this is the source which has to nourish our respective faiths.
The Sea of Galilee, where roots run deep in Jewish and Christian tradition. The Galilee is magic. Many consider it the home of Jewish mysticism. Great rabbis worked here, created Jewish law. And Jesus created his ministries here. Some of his very miracles we hear about today happened right here on the Sea of Galilee. This is the home of religious revolution. That's why it's a good starting place for an interfaith group from South Florida to begin its journey in the Holy Land.
Roll, Jordan, roll.
Perrine Sweet Home Missionary Church pastor Walter Richardson spontaneously bursts into song when he sees the Jordan River where Christ was baptized. In this 2000th anniversary of his birth, thousands like this group from Poland come to be baptized in the Jordan too. Togetherness. Rabbi Gary Glickstein, who helped organize this mission, joins in Richardson's Song of Joy.
The best way is for us to get to know each other and then work together to make our community better, and then we reach across and we build a coalition that serves our neighborhood.
In a church where Jesus fed thousands with just 5 loaves and 2 fish, another warm moment.
I just recognize Monsignor.
2 nuns from Holland remember Bishop Thomas Winsky from a conference in Argentina. Rabbi Schiff caught them eyeing his yarmulke. Bishops wear skull caps too.
I'm not a bishop. But I'm a Schiff rabbi. My name is Schiff. I'm a Schiff rabbi.
What do you think of a group like this?
Extraordinary. May God bless you.
A surprise for Reverend Richardson. He spotted an ancient painting of the Madonna and Child with black features.
But that certainly is a good affirmation being here in the Holy Land to see a picture of Jesus and his mother with dark skin, at least bronze.
A lot of people, I might look at that at first glance, and I might not see what you saw.
Right.
I might not see. To me, it just
which might be the intent of the artist.
Yeah, it might be.
But I can certainly see me in that picture.
So you're finding out, I heard you say before we left, you wondered if there was a role for the black man in the Holy Land. You don't read about it much in the
Absolutely.
Bible.
Absolutely.
On our first day, you found something.
On our very first day. That's very reassuring. And praise God.
Overlooking the Sea of Galilee, the Church of the Beatitudes, where Jesus delivered his Sermon on the Mount. A cherished moment for 83-year-old retired Miami Archbishop Edward McCarthy, who celebrated Mass on the sacred spot he had not visited in 25 years.
Jesus Christ our Lord. It's a very moving experience to know, that you're back at this spot where the Lord himself appeared and the great mysteries and events of our faith transpired, and to be here and to be sort of able to try to join him and join the people who must have been around him and have a better understanding of these tremendous mysteries of the faith.
Blessed are the lowly, they shall inherit the land.
Rabbi Glickstein was struck to hear Catholics reading the same prayers he uses in services at Miami Beach's Temple Beth Shalom.
He went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and then he began to speak. And
alone outside the church, Reverend Whitehead of Bal Harbor's Church by the Sea, comforted by Jesus' vision of heaven, according to the book of Matthew.
Think of it in the context of a live person saying these things, and ordinary fishermen and people who lived around here listening in a new way to what God was trying to say. That helps to bring it alive. It's a beautiful place.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm standing on the Sea of Galilee at a kosher Chinese restaurant here with Ike Seamans and Carlos, and we're just having a good time getting used to the culture. This is where Jesus is supposed to have walked on the ocean, and it's right behind us here. What a beautiful sight.
The South Floridians grow closer. Roots intertwine. Interfaith relations really do work here, don't they? A dose of reality is coming up next. Last year, interfaith relations in Israel took a major hit. In fact, they collided right here in Nazareth.
Heaven's here on earth.
Dear the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Praise to our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God.
In the Catholic Church's Jubilee year, the Pope is coming to Israel. He will stress interfaith relations in a land where the world's three major religions worship God in different ways. But they do have common roots and common values, like charity, peace, love thy neighbor, togetherness. In the Holy Land, they don't always practice what they preach.
Well, we're sort of still living out all this sort of separateness. We tend to live separate existences. People tend to be, in this part of the world, very tribal, very national.
Nazareth is the perfect example. But this is for mosque.
Yeah, this is for mosque.
Muslims are the predominant religious group here. They want to build a new mosque on this square in Nazareth where Jesus lived and Christianity began.
This is Shahabuddin. He's dead in 607.
They say their old one, which contains the tomb of Shahabuddin, their martyr who was killed during the Crusader Wars, is too small.
That's his tomb.
Next door, the Catholic Church of the Annunciation wants the square for a plaza and more parking for the faithful who come to worship on the spot where Christians believe the angel Gabriel told Mary she would give birth to the Son of God. Since December, Muslims have occupied the square, and the Vatican charged Israel created religious tensions when it suggested they share the space. Negotiations are on hold until after the Pope's visit.
Why you accept to have, if all the land are waqf, why you accept to have 5 meters and not the 2 dunums? This is the absurd
problem of Nazareth.
Miami Archbishop John Favalora was the referee when local clergy and politicians clearly showed interfaith relations are strained because of the controversy.
I think this issue, the way it was presented to the world, the way the outsiders even got involved with it, did harm interfaith relations in the city. I think there's a great deal to work on and to manage.
Our common heritage tells us that somewhere back at the beginning, our parents did not listen to what God wanted, and we inherit all of those difficulties from Adam and Eve or whatever other traditions we follow. We have the same problems.
People need to learn how to live with it.
Elian Gonzalez even got involved in Nazareth. He's a big story in the Holy Land. The swirl of politics around him has a familiar ring to many who live here, since politics is part of everything in Israel, including a religious battle in Nazareth.
When we came here and saw this small piece of land, this small piece of the square, we were all surprised that such a small thing became such a big problem, that we would even know about it across the ocean. Then it seems to me that, like little Eliancito in Miami, that little problem reveals bigger underlying problems, which are now manifest. I think you're saying that the same might be happening here.
It was used as a political tool. We are destroying ourselves. If we continue this mode of coexistence, this is not life. It's very dangerous.
Back in the square, Muslims have a simple faith in God.
A mosque here, inshallah, no? Inshallah. Inshallah.
Inshallah, Arabic for God willing. The mosque will be built despite Christian resistance, and they charge Jewish interference. Nazareth is just the latest battleground for major religions here, which have shown for centuries they have trouble getting along. So,
now you might wonder why an interfaith group of South Florida religious leaders had to come all the way from Miami to the Holy Land, 6,600 miles. Well, it has a lot to do with things like that. The Western Wall, Judaism's most holy site.
To Rabbi Solomon Schiff, a key to renewing faith is learning up close about the religious shrines, traditions, even problems of others to improve relations back home.
So what we have to do is dialogue on God issues. So for example, for Jews, we wonder, so what does Israel mean? The Christians don't know what Israel means to the Jews.
The perception is that religious leaders are all fanatics, and all they do is, why would we bring them into a dialogue when all they'll do is kind of, fan the flames?
Another reality check from Miami Beach native Rabbi Ron Kronish. He works full-time in Jerusalem trying to improve interfaith relations. It's not easy in a country where he says many reject spiritual guidance.
If you ask people, how come you don't have religious leaders, rabbis or ministers or imams involved in this, they said, what? What would they have to do with this?
To our group, this is why they must work closer back home.
Seems like we might be moving a little bit faster in America than they're moving here, even though we have some very strange problems in Miami along racial, social, and other lines.
There's a lot going on in Miami that needs a lot of work, and precious few of us have been willing to do anything. Anything. How many actual things are we doing between our churches, between our organizations, that would help our people learn more about each other?
Of Jesus.
Makal Natour, a professor of Islamic law, understands that. His faith and his people, Palestinians, he charges, are frequently ignored by Christians and Jews.
In what ways we can be connected and helpful to the process, not peace process, I'm saying as people, as religious leaders.
Help me to be a human being, to live with dignity, with our rights. If you help me, that's all. Thank you for that. Without dollars. Just give me the opportunity to live in my land with dignity, not more.
Coming up next, what does relations between religions have to do with the state of Israel anyway?
Reverend Whitehead finds out in a Palestinian refugee camp where there's a religious faith few outsiders rarely see.
Przyrzekacie wiernie trwać przy wierze ojców naszych.
Przyrzekamy. Christian pilgrims to the Holy Land, retracing the steps of Christ during this, the 2000th anniversary of his birth.
Przyjmij wodę z rzeki Jordan.
Jews renew their faith as well in the land that's home to the world's three major religions, including Islam. But all too often, scenes like this mar the dream. Israeli soldiers, Jews, against Palestinians, Muslims.
So many Israelis have never talked with a Palestinian and only see them as all as terrorists. And on the other hand, Palestinians have never seen an Israeli or talked to one outside of a uniform.
They don't really know each other. Jews demand revenge against Muslims.
The time has come to stop the restraint, and the time has come to attack.
Muslims demand revenge against Jews. While the South Florida Interfaith Group searching the Holy Land for understanding and the renewal of faith did not encounter scenes like these, they did learn there is a great need in the Holy Land for religious dialogue to end what many times appears to be senseless violence. Efrat is a neat as a pin Jewish settlement in the West Bank, about 15 minutes south of Jerusalem. Most of its 3,000 to 4,000 residents are religious. Aida is a grim and grubby Palestinian camp just 5 minutes away. Most of its 3,000 to 4,000 residents are religious too. Efrat's chief rabbi, Shlomo Riskin, wants peace.
I think that the average village Palestinian wants peace like the average Israeli wants peace.
Security for them, but I think...
Aida's council leader, Ibrahim Isa Abu Sur, wants peace too.
Because we are human and we want to live in peace. Exactly like Israeli Jews. Exactly like them.
True religious and decent men kept apart by politics they have never met. Each blames the other's government for encouraging bad behavior that prevents true interfaith relations.
There's leadership within the Palestinian Authority that is doing everything to thwart those good relations. That literally is exercising terror over the Palestinian populations.
The Israel government, to be correct, I don't want to say all the Israeli people doesn't want peace.
We're destined to share this land, and we have to do it as friends, as cousins, and even as brothers. And therefore, relationships such as ours should be fostered and not stifled.
Reverend Priscilla Feliski Whitehead visited the 32-year-old Abu Sur in his home in the refugee camp.
What is your feeling toward Israel at this point in time?
Until now, I think it's impossible to be there's a peace.
They talk beneath the picture of his brother who was killed by Israeli soldiers during the Intifada, the Palestinian uprising 13 years ago. It's a common story here. An Israeli military position is just outside the Aida camp to prevent residents without permits from leaving Palestinian territory. The United Nations provides schools and social services as it has here for 50 years.
There's Jerusalem right there, where he cannot go.
This wall.
The wall,
yes.
is the boundary?
Yes, the wall is the boundary.
It's so hard to imagine for so many.
Yet, as she walked through the camp, Reverend Whitehead found a simple faith so prevalent among Muslims that somehow God will prevail and make life better.
Yeah.
This man makes $10 on a good day in his tiny shop. He's lived in this camp for 50 years, ever since the Israelis captured his village and ordered him to leave.
Where do you get the hope that keeps you going?
Inshallah,
Inshallah, God willing, a Muslim's way of saying faith in God gives him strength. The call to prayer. Sheikh Nasser, the imam, the camp's religious leader, appears. Blind, more than 100 years old. No one knows his exact age. He never misses prayers.
I want to, I guess I ask him the same way, how he helps to take care of a community that is in this state of displacement.
It's in God's hands, he says, only God.
So if you live according, if you live your faith out, that God will respond as well by fulfilling your dreams, as you were saying.
If your hearts are clean and white, God will help us.
A rare honor for outsiders, the imam permits us to enter the mosque. Just a room, really, but God is here for believers the poor, and the displaced, who ironically live in a land where religious teachings like charity and caring for others were born. Many Muslims feel Christians and Jews really do believe, because of the actions of some, they are all nothing but terrorists who have no religious feelings or beliefs. Reverend Whitehead, what do you think of this?
I said to Abraham, I can't imagine the pain. It's a challenge for religious leaders. They are in positions of helping people of faith to find ways in which to be connected. I think right now what they can do, one basic thing is to encourage them that there are people who care and who will, even in their own small way, be praying for them. Certainly I take that reminder back from a place like this.
Coming up next, about 50 miles north of here, while politicians negotiate to perhaps give back the Golan Heights to Syria, many of those who live up here don't agree with that.
In Golan, very important. This is the eyes of the country.
And why the Golan Heights helps Christians understand the Jewish attachment to their homeland. The South Florida Interfaith Group climbs into the Golan Heights. In biblical times, Joshua moved the Israelites into the beautiful mountains overlooking the Sea of Galilee and the Hula Valley after he conquered Canaan, because he knew the value of the high ground.
The Sinai Peninsula, bordering the Suez.
The Israelis seized the high ground in the Golan Heights in 1967 from the Syrians. They defended it 6 years later during the Yom Kippur War. Israel Defense Forces bases everywhere make it impossible today for the 18,000 Israelis who live up here to forget. Live minefields everywhere. Old Syrian positions that were used to shell Israeli settlements in the valleys below. Just across the border, a Syrian military base, and an Israeli spy base watches and listens. At the very top, misty images of young soldiers, Israelis, on patrol just in case. This is an old Israeli position at the top of the Golan Heights. Syria's over there, Israel over here. There hasn't been a shot fired in anger from this position in more than 25 years. But there are Israelis, particularly those who live in the Golan Heights, who believe that if Syria gets this territory, there will be shots fired again.
As Jews, we see the vital interests of Israel at the core of what's going on in Israel, and we would like our non-Jewish partners back in the United States to understand our point of view and our agenda.
That's why Rabbi Gary Glickstein of Miami Beach's Temple Beth Shalom brought the mostly Christian group up here. To understand Israel, he says, is to understand Jews, and that improves interfaith relations.
It's important for us that they go back and they say what they saw, and that they can communicate in a way to their people that we can't.
Israeli high school students at a memorial for war dead make it clear to the South Florida religious leaders the Golan should not be returned to Syria.
She said we are not allowed to give it back.
You think most kids your age feel that way?
Yeah, most of them.
16-year-old Judah Marson of Haifa shows how politics and religion always mix out here.
It's written in the Bible that this is included in the original borders that God set. We have had settlers here for over 32 years and with their families, and what they want to do is move them off, which is, we feel, is totally wrong. And the people of Israel are just one with this part of land.
Religion and politics.
No, of course.
You can't separate them here.
No.
Reverend Michael Sukar, executive secretary to the Miami Archbishop, has mixed emotions. He's been hearing about the Golan Heights since he was a kid in Fort Lauderdale from his grandparents. They came from Syria.
For my family, they always say they have to get back to Golan. My parents say that it's Syrian territory.
I think they're ready. I think Israel's ready.
There is what I hear is a great sense of fear from the Syrians on the part of the Israelis. I can see that as legitimate in the sense of the strategic importance of the place.
There's a time for war, a time for peace. The time for war is ended. Let's make peace. That's the kind of attitude that we think has to be on all sides.
In all communities, we need cultural brokers.
Jim Howe runs the Interfaith National Conference for Community and Justice in Miami.
Perhaps by visiting a place like this of such strategic importance, Christians, both Catholic and Protestant, begin to share some of the understanding that for at least a moment they get a sense of what the Golan Heights means to the Jewish world of faith. Sure.
Kibbutz Ayelet HaShahar is in the Hula Valley, a prime target for Syrian gunners when they control the Golan Heights. Rabbi Glickstein has family here.
They'll give it back if they believe that there's a future that means peace for their kids. And they won't give it back if they don't believe that will happen.
It's like a real propeller.
A Syrian fighter plane that crashed here is kept on a children's playground as a constant reminder. Bomb shelters are ready and waiting.
This is where the Syrian were. Okay, this is where the Syrian were. The old border with Syria was just on the bottom of the Golan Heights.
49-year-old Amon Daton remembers spending 2 wars inside the shelters. He thinks Israel is ready for peace. Syria is not.
With all the big hard feeling, with all the history, land will not be issue. But to create it, you need to create a forces of belief and understanding that you have somebody serious enough that you can do business and you can believe that they will keep up to their word. And the situation at the moment, as we talk, is not proving us that something really dramatic has changed.
A dramatic change is coming in July. Just 4 miles from the kibbutz, young Israeli soldiers are attacked and killed almost every week by terrorists in the so-called security zone in South Lebanon. Established to protect northern Israel, many Israelis believe Syria controls the terrorists, and when the soldiers leave, it will be easier for them to attack inside Israel.
No Israeli government will accept.
Yossi Alfer is one of the many experts who told the South Florida religious leaders a peace agreement will eventually be signed. But even he admits hard feelings die slowly between Muslims and Jews out here.
I want to see some indication by the Syrians that they understand what peace means. Something. I know it's going to be a cold peace. I don't have any illusions that because we sign a contract with the Palestinians or the Syrians, we are automatically lovey-dovey neighbors. It will take 30 or 50 years easily before our borders look like the U.S.-Canadian border.
The frustrating and perplexing Holy Land was teaching a good lesson to the South Floridians, what to avoid back home to improve relations. Coming up, I'll tell you how a snowstorm in Jerusalem led to one of the most meaningful part of this interfaith mission from South Florida.
I've seen spirits, I've met angels, touched creations, beautiful.
It snowed. It snowed some more. It snowed until 15 inches blanketed Jerusalem, the biggest snowstorm in 50 years. So big, it turned men of the cloth into kids again. Mortal combat on a Jerusalem street between Bishop Tom Winsky, Father Michael Sukar, and could it be, yes it could, Archbishop John Favalora, who launched a belt-high fastball at photographer Carlos Regal.
You can stay about, what, 5 minutes out here, Bishop? Oh!
Rabbi Schiff thought about making it an interfaith snowball fight, but then a peace offering from Bishop Winsky.
Peace offering said shalom.
The unexpected weather shut down Jerusalem at the end of the interfaith mission. No sightseeing, no speakers, snowbound. They were now alone together. These leaders who know each other so well discovered a new openness brought on by being in the Holy Land. The let your hair down soul searching unexpectedly began with a sensitive issue. Rabbi Schiff discussing the Holocaust.
So Israel was created out of the ashes of Auschwitz. We ask, who is responsible for the Holocaust? I once heard of a man that said to a friend of his, he said, did you know that the two most terrible things in our society today is ignorance and indifference? So his friend said, I don't know, and I don't care. Indifference. Indifference.
I appreciate and understand both the need and the value, as you're saying, of remembering the Holocaust. A generation later, while we want to remember, are we being held responsible as well? I guess sometimes I feel that I'm asked to carry the burden of what the Nazis did to the Jews. But it wasn't only against Jews, and I think that that's sometimes I don't hear that. I think that's an absence.
Others were killed because they, for whatever reason, prisoners, the list goes on and on. The Jewish people were the only ones that were singled out as a total people for, quote, the final solution.
This idea of, of pain is, there's no one person, there's no one race, there's no one culture that has a monopoly on pain. We have to accept our pain, take responsibility for it, and it's hard for, I think, to lay on somebody else the burden of one's own pain.
We feel equally guilty. Each of us take a personal responsibility.
But I still carry a sense of accountability in terms of how I must deal with the leftovers of the Holocaust, which to me, there is something very frightening in the human nature that could allow Holocaust to go forward.
It's a spiritual problem. We live in a society, and in our United States society particularly, we live in a society that doesn't want any responsibility. And it gets wider and wider what we tolerate, and all of a sudden we wake up and there's a Holocaust. And we say, how did we get here? And we got here inch by inch with every decision that every individual makes.
And I really count upon religious leadership, above all, to be the very front line of that struggle.
As I mentioned to Jim the other day, really understanding what humanity is all about and our common roots. That we may all look different and talk differently, but we're all really the same.
But there seems to be, when you're focusing on one group, indifference to other things that are happening in society, instead of our uniting, thank God we are here.
And the more we listen, the more we learn, the more we let that take hold of ourselves, the more we come to understand our own responsibility for those things.
If this mission has done anything, one thing I see in it is that we became sensitized to one another.
We are there also to creatively find these kinds of opportunities for people to be willing to risk sharing their hurts, sharing their wounds. And that doesn't even happen in the clergy dialogue, as you say.
And this, I think, is the healthiest discussion that I remember having anywhere. We can become the catalyst in making a more caring and more sensitive community back home.
Help us.
Then a prayer, renewing faith.
To renew us in your spirit and fortify us to be more dedicated in preaching your word to those to whom you have sent us. We make this prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Coming up next, did the South Florida religious leaders who came to this holy land get what they came here for?
The world is our temple, the world is our church. Heaven's here on earth.
A journey through Jerusalem's Old City takes the South Florida Interfaith Mission along streets where King David marched in triumph, where Jesus and his disciples had their Last Supper, where Muhammad ascended to heaven. And where doing a deal is a time-honored tradition in the Holy Land.
Can you go a little more, just a little more, because it's snow we have.
Reverend Walter Richardson and Jim Howe up against the pros in the Arab quarters.
Sorry, brother.
Okay, 16 price, brother.
We'll be looking forward to seeing you on our way back.
60, okay?
On our way back, we'll pick it up for
Okay, give me $50. Okay, give me $50. Okay, 50, give me back. I want to visit snow, no business.
The Miamians got their price, but don't think the store owner didn't get his as well.
Okay, 90 for two. Okay, 90 for two. I give you 10 back. The best price we give you.
Richardson's first trip to Israel has been full of surprises. Before he arrived, he wondered if blacks and other people of color had significant religious roles in the Holy Land.
The Jewish community grew up, the Muslim community grows also. But
Richardson met Kamal Hana Bashish, a Palestinian and the Roman Catholic Church's #2 person in the Middle East. His superior, the patriarch, is also Palestinian.
Baptist.
The all-black Ethiopian Orthodox Church has been in Jerusalem longer than any other Eastern Christian faith.
You speak Hebrew?
The Ethiopian monks constantly renew their faith.
Well, I'm very glad to see you, because you look like me. You're my brother.
Yes.
He met a young Ethiopian Christian just outside the church.
Are you my brother? Or?
Yeah. No, also, I believe, this white people, you are black people. Also, I'm black people. I say this is the same,
We're the same?
Yeah, the same.
Okay.
The white people also is my brother, black people is my brother. No, this is the same.
It's
black
the same.
And white are the same, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
believe
for
the color.
Great.
Richardson also met Ethiopian Jews. And on a Nazareth street, he ran into Father Thomas, a South African Catholic priest. He's lived here for years.
We have problems in America. It's a see if, in fact, there is prejudice in the Holy Land.
I've experienced it myself.
As a priest?
As a priest and also as a Christian.
As a Christian black?
Exactly. But there are many good people I've come across, very good, sympathetic, who are against this, what you call it, fanaticism.
I spied him walking down the aisle, down the pathway, and I said, I'm going to find out what he's made of and what he's all about.
Did you find out?
Yes, I did.
What's he made of?
The same thing everybody else is made out of, flesh and blood, and he has great spiritual gifts, and I'm glad I met him.
In a Palestinian refugee camp, Reverend Priscilla Feliski Whitehead found an interfaith connection in a mosque.
It gives me a deepened appreciation for the ways in which other people have understood and appreciated God's liveliness and God's reaching out for us.
In our joy we sing to you.
Bishop Tom Winsky, the tough, no-nonsense community activist in Miami, showed his deep religious faith in the Holy Land. It reminded him of how we are all connected.
Our religious roots are certainly intermingled and intertwined, just like the roots of a plant, and that's obvious in every step you make in the Holy Land.
Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.
Ramifications.
As we stood in the glow of the Old City, Archbishop John Favalora says he renewed his faith here too.
Well, it brought me back 2,000 years. It made me so eternally grateful that for the faith that I have been given, that God has given to me.
Today in him a new light has dawned.
In Bethlehem, where Christ was born, Favalora celebrated Christmas Mass in February in an underground chapel at St. Catherine's to honor Jesus.
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
I prayed for all of the people of the Archdiocese, because I really believe that Christ came for all of us, to liberate all of us, to show us the way and to be our truth and our life. And so to be present at that moment, I mean, it was very, very emotional for me.
Marvelous is this oneness between God and man.
Join with the Lord in renewal.
Retired Archbishop Edward McCarthy, who was on the first interfaith mission in 1978, says This was a great trip for the South Florida religious leaders.
Yes, I thank the Lord for what we were able to accomplish.
All the money will go to one pot?
Rabbi Gary Glickstein helped organize this mission in hopes of solving many South Florida problems.
The best way is for us to get to know each other and then work together to make our community better.
At the Western Wall in Jerusalem, Rabbi Solomon Schiff's renewal of faith centered around this trip that he organized for his Christian colleagues.
We learn from one another the pains that hurt us. And we are here to be able to digest and to share with each other our wounds, our pains, our hurt, our expectations of each other, our disappointments with each other. And I feel better for it.
I think we have some of the leaders here who are going to make the difference in Miami, who already have made the difference, and who's...
I talked to Jim Howe in St. Catharines.
I see the kinds of reverence that Christians and Jews have for each other's traditions as being evidenced by the behavior, the attitude, the conversation on this trip. And it gives me hope that these leaders can lead their congregations to more understanding and compassion, more peace, more empathy for their fellows.
You know, our religious leaders had so much more to say about this unique trip, we couldn't get it all in this show. So after this special is over, I want you to go to our website, www.nbc6.net. You'll see another special report I put together on Mission Holy Land, Renewing Faith. That's our program. I'm Senior Correspondent Ike Seamans. Thanks very much for watching.
Look for God and life on distant planets. Have your faith in the ever after, while each of us holds inside the map to the labyrinth. Heaven's here on earth. Conscience, we create the pain and the suffering and the beauty in this world. Heaven's here on earth.
Partial funding for this program was made possible through the generosity of Mr. Benjamin Botwinick and Judge Irving Sipin.
It's a land of breathtaking beauty. It's a land of great contrast. To many, it's the land of milk and honey. But to those who live in Israel, and to Jews everywhere, Israel is simply the land called home. As Israel enters its second half century as a nation, there is prosperity. And there is a problem. There's still no lasting peace here. As the peace agreement with the Palestinians inched forward last month, a large group from the Greater Miami Jewish Federation arrived to get an up-close look at what life on the edge is really like here and to find out if they could help the homeland. South Floridians already donate millions to Israel. They're here during the time of the peace process trying to be negotiated, a peace process that may be in trouble.
I think it's especially important that this group is being here bonding with the people of Israel during what can be what is a very difficult time for them.
There were renewed clashes between Israeli soldiers and Palestinians just 3 days after the negotiated pullback of Israeli soldiers from the West Bank. In an Israel without peace, danger is a mosaic, a kaleidoscope of daily images. Young soldiers load up their rifle magazines just in case while stopping at a suburban shopping center for lunch. Off-duty soldiers at a wine tasting. They are never unarmed. A bomb threat at the Western Wall, Judaism's most holy place. Terrorist bombers hit Jerusalem's fruit and vegetable market 2 days before we arrived. The Zion Gate in Jerusalem, still pockmarked with bullet holes from the war in 1967. Active minefields in the Upper Galilee, left over from past wars. I'm at what the Israelis call the good fence in northern Israel. It's the dividing line between Israel and southern Lebanon. Now, years ago, Israelis went in there and created what they call a buffer zone because terrorists still work those hills over there. A week after I was there, terrorists killed 7 soldiers along the fence line. 22 Israeli soldiers have died this year in the buffer zone in southern Lebanon. That's why Israeli soldiers closely check anyone who comes near on either side of the border, and why they come to work every day looking like they're going to war. Isn't the peace process supposed to end all of this?
ובתרדמת אילן ואבן, שבויה בחלומה, העיר אשר בדד יושבת, ובליבה חומה, ירושלים.
Jerusalem, the most important piece of unfinished business in the peace process. One of the world's most ancient and holiest cities for 3 major religions. Jerusalem is also hip, the music of pop groups like Ethnic packing in young Israelis. But even on crowded and modern Ben Yehuda Street, the city's 3,000-year-old tradition of being at the center of one battle after the other continues. Last year on this street, a Palestinian suicide bomber blew himself and a dozen Israelis apart. Now, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, but the Palestinians want a part of it too. Who ultimately controls what will be the most crucial part of the peace process. It will make the Israeli troop pullout from the West Bank seem like a high school football game. Jerusalem is the Super Bowl. Both sides know it. Both sides want it as their capital. Not even an optimistic liberal like former Prime Minister Shimon Peres thinks compromise will work.
We're not going to divide Jerusalem. Jerusalem will remain united as the capital of Israel.
Israel stirs the cauldron of Palestinian dissent and anger by continuing to build in Jerusalem to increase the Israeli population in the city. The government has announced plans to build more than 6,500 homes in southern Jerusalem near the Arab town of Bethlehem. Palestinians are outraged. And in Arab East Jerusalem, land owned by Bell Harbor millionaire Dr. Irving Moskovitz continues to be cleared. The scene of riots last year, he wants to build a Jewish religious study center in the midst of a Palestinian neighborhood. The government hasn't given final approval. Moskovitz is sure the Prime Minister wants him to build.
He wants us to be here. And we will give him strength because we are here.
Palestinians haven't shown much evidence of compromise. Attacks against Israelis continue. And Yasser Arafat has been seen on Palestinian television glorifying the terrorists.
النسير على طريقهم فنحن جميعا مشاريع شهادة مشاريع شهادة مشاريع شهادة.
He calls the struggle for Jerusalem a battle of life and death. Palestinian television keeps the pot boiling.
I have raised my children on jihad, holy war, and on the principle that they never give up on their land. I taught them that they must return.
The Children's Hour is in prime time, produced by the Palestinian Education Ministry.
جئت في عز التعب رشاشة عنف وغضب وغضب وغضب. إذا احتجت على باب القدس أسقط فدائيا أسقط فدائيا بزي مقاتلي بزي مقاتلي بزي مقاتلي وشكرا. برافو برافو. ومن رام موت الفداء فداه فكيف اصطباري لكيد اليهود.
They are still educated to hate Jews, they are still anti-Semitic, they still believe and want very much to destroy the state of Israel.
I don't know what the Israelis are teaching their kids. Maybe they're not teaching them directly to hate the Arabs, but they're not teaching them anything about our right in this land, okay?
Roye Rizik is a Palestinian who lives with Jews. He's the mayor of Neve Shalom, located on a hill near the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway. Founded in 1979, Neve Shalom has about 30 Arab and Israeli families who work and play together. They also sponsor the School for Peace. There's a waiting list to move in. Rizik, educated at the University of Texas, is the village mayor. Shai Schwartz, an Israeli entertainer, helps to educate people about Neve Shalom.
I remember when I first came, hitting a lot of criticism. There has to be a lot of education done. There has to be a lot of meeting done on, as I say, grassroots level. And there is a beginning of this.
I myself, I don't see of this village as an example of a solution. I don't think that all Jews and all Palestinians should live together in mixed communities to prove that peace is possible. What I believe in is that we should come to this point of stop arguing about the past and who started and who is guilty and who is to blame, because each one of us could convince very good, including me, anybody of my right in this land, and me being the victim, and them being the aggressors, and so the Jewish could do the same thing from this side, and we are stuck into this argument that never ends and doesn't bring us to any place.
Jerusalem is just up the hill from Neve Shalom. Schwartz thinks the Neve Shalom example might work in that city filled with constant turmoil.
How can you ever go into a minefield like Jerusalem and demine all those myths and monsters that are behind every single wall, every chapel, every synagogue, every mosque in Jerusalem, and try and make that into a neutral ground?
Shimon Peres thinks he has the answer, and it involves the millions of dollars American Jews send to Israel.
Maybe instead of investing the money in infrastructure or food, we have to invest it in universities, in research centers, in joint ventures with the Palestinians.
Are you saying you would take contributions from American Jewry and do joint ventures with the Palestinians?
Yes, together. The Americans, the Palestinians, us. We have to, you see, even if it should be separated as we should, as states, we have to cooperate together.
Jewish society is definitely opened up to the idea of coexistence.
I mean, believe in coexistence shouldn't come out of me because I love the Jews, okay? I'm stuck with them in this miserable situation here, okay? And I want to find a way out of it. Jeep loads of South Floridians move into an old battle zone in the Upper Galilee to see what price Israelis have paid for peace. During the Six-Day War in 1967, while Israeli forces were capturing Jerusalem and the Western Wall, settlements in this northern valley were bombarded by Syrian tanks and artillery in the Golan Heights.
the Israelis won. Bunkers remain from the Yom Kippur War in 1973, when Israel once again was victorious in the Golan Heights.
And then they started to dig themselves up here very deeply, very massively.
Now the South Floridians learn some of the Golan may have to be returned. Bob Behar of Miami.
Once you're up here, you can't see why they can't get back to Golan Heights. I mean, if you sit up here and you see the valleys and you see the kibbutz and you see the homes of the Israeli children below, you realize why the conflict that's going on in the Middle East is so important and why there has to be peace.
Beyond that fence is a minefield up here in the Golan Heights near Syria. People up here are always thinking about peace because there's so many reminders of war. Not only the minefield, there's an old Syrian bunker left over from 1967. You can even find bomb fragments still laying on the ground.
Nitza Shapiro lives just 50 yards away. That doesn't bother her. Giving back some of the Golan Heights under the new peace plan does.
She's for peace, but not this peace. This situation is very bad. This situation is a war inside a war. The price is too expensive.
Peace is the real objective.
Retired Major General Yoram Yair helped to win the Golan Heights in 1973. We stood at a spot overlooking the Sea of Galilee where Syrian artillery and tanks once fired into Israeli territory. Should any of this land be returned?
It's not a military question, it's a political question. And politically, it's right to pay whatever it's needed to reach peace. I know one thing. Whatever we will pay for this peace is nothing, simply nothing compared to what you pay in wartime.
The possible return of land to the Syrians is far away in the peace process. For now, the peace controversy centers on returning land to the Palestinians, further south in the West Bank. I first came to Israel in 1973 as the Yom Kippur War was ending. Israel had strengthened its hold on the West Bank and Gaza where the Palestinians live. A lasting peace seemed a distant dream. Not to Information Minister Shimon Peres.
While we didn't reach the shores of peace, we are, in spite of everything else, in a more promising period in the confrontation between the two movements of rebirth, the Arab and the Jewish one.
You know, it was 25 years ago when I first interviewed you, and at that time you were very encouraged about peace. Do you feel the same way now?
Yes, I mean, we made in the meantime peace with Egypt, peace with the Jordanians. We're in the middle of making peace with the Palestinians. I wish it would be faster and quicker, but it's on the move.
Peres is now a former prime minister and co-winner of the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to achieve peace with the Palestinians.
Do you think that the Palestinians really have an idea of what they want to accomplish as far as peace is concerned?
Yes. They have their dreams, we have our dreams. The dreams are in contradiction, and the act or the need of the politicians is to bridge between two different dreams, but not to do it with arms, but to do it with wisdom.
Pat and Marty Fine of Miami have Israeli and Arab friends who think they have the wisdom to want peace.
I think they're both right. I think patience and pursuance of peace is absolutely essential.
Arabs and Jews have been doing business here in the ancient passageways of Jerusalem for thousands of years. The Fines think modern politics are dividing them.
Long before there was even an Israel, people in this old quarter were at peace with each other. They got along as neighbors, they got along as merchants, and we've come a long way away from that politically.
These kids are Kafkazis, Jews from the Caucasus Mountains in the former Soviet Union, part of the huge immigration that is helping to change Israel economically, and that could improve chances for peace eventually. They live in Or Akiva.
A good example of economic development in Israel is Or Akiva. When I first came here in 1989, it was a backwater. Take a look at it now.
Street after street of new homes and apartments, a modern shopping center, an industrial park filled with cosmetics firms, improved schools. So many Russian immigrants, 8,500 in a town of 25,000, Signs are in Hebrew and Russian. They're doing well.
Kavkazский.
Kavkazский.
Русский, белорусский, кавказский.
Yevgeny says his gold teeth, a tradition in his Russian village, are a sure sign he's got it made.
Did you find out the answer to that problem?
Things like better schools attracts new investment and new people. Miami Jews have contributed more than $6 million to make this happen in Orokiva.
And hope you see the good result to your investment. Thank you from all the pupils of Rabbi Akiva schools.
Carolyn Miller of Miami Beach.
And it was just amazing how this has grown. Every time I come back, I can't believe I'm in Orokiva.
Rachel Gabai feels the same way. For 47 years, Yakov, who recently died, and Rachel ran a small shop in Orokiva. I met them in 1989 when times were hard. The town's new development has changed all that.
Things are beyond my expectations.
Once, the agricultural kibbutz was the symbol for Israel's economic growth. No more.
Before the kibbutz, or 20 years ago, 15 years ago, was living only by agriculture, fish, apples, oranges, and so. Today, they cannot afford it anymore. They must have some advanced technology.
Michel Beton is president of Galilee Optics, which rakes in up to $4 million a year for his kibbutz selling sunglasses worldwide. This kibbutz makes millions with its franchises: Ace Hardware, Office Depot, McDonald's, and Toys R Us. Another cleans up with mud, beauty products from the Dead Sea. Golan Winery is earning millions for the 4 kibbutz that own it. It's totally automated and built on land that once was used by the Syrians to bombard Israel with mortar shells. Winemaster Victor Schoenfeld is from Napa Valley, California.
It's quite important. This is one of the most successful businesses in the Golan Heights.
The private sector is booming. Tel Aviv has tapped into a digital gold mine. With 1,000 high-tech firms, Newsweek just named it one of the world's top 10 cities of the information age. The Florida-Israel Chamber of Commerce says 30 of those companies have South Florida offices. The boom, however, is not trickling down to the Palestinians.
It is time to roll.
Sandy Cutler is a tourist guide. Formerly of North Miami Beach, the Norland High and FIU graduate believes a better life for the Palestinians is the key to peace.
If the Palestinians have if their standard of living and if their lives become enhanced and are better, they have something to lose and something to protect. And then it's in their best interest to observe the peace. As long as they have nothing to lose, they have nothing to lose.
In a land where fighting has been going on for 3,000 years, peace in Israel is still uncertain. And there are many unanswered questions about the peace process. Who will control Jerusalem? What about the Golan Heights? How to divide the limited water supply? Should 5 million Palestinians in exile be permitted to return? Should a Palestinian state have an army? There are no easy answers.
We are a mosaic, and we need to be respectful of each other's differences. And out of that respect, there's a possibility for peace.
Most Israelis will not be ready to comply with Palestinian demands, and then we will be faced with the terror threats, with the danger of war. I believe that we have to have a process of maybe 30, maybe 50 years.
30 to 50 years?
Yes.
Why did he say so? If we shall not approve, we shall clearly have war. Not in 30 years, but in 2 years.
This is my land and this is where I'm going to stay, no matter what will happen here.
American Jews have a big stake in Israel financially and emotionally. To them, the country's future is important because of the past. Norman Brayman of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation explains why.
It's a home that's just built into our soul. I think Israel being born out of the ashes of the Holocaust is the real answer to that question, Ike. And I think this is what really links Israel to the Jewish people. We all realize that had there been an Israel in the 30s, in the 40s, 6 million Jews wouldn't have died. Israel just represents the beacon of hope, of faith for Jews.
And what of the children with hope in their eyes? Would they be masters or slaves? And what of the future, the truths and the lies? Would there be children to say?
At the top of Masada, more than 1,900 years ago, a small group of Jews called the Zealots committed suicide rather than surrender to the Romans. And to this day, Masada remains a symbol of freedom. Born out of the worst tragedy of the 20th century, Israel is forever linked to its past. And now, in this land called home, Israel and Jews everywhere, to go forward into the future, must never forget what or who they left behind.
La 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 la